A quick and simple argument against overpopulation, or eco-fascism.
As a global community, we really have got to start dealing with the issue of population.
In the 2020 film Planet of the Humans, author Richard Heimberg states, "There are too many human beings using too much, too fast." This argument can be broken down into two parts. Humans are using too many resources because there are too many humans. There are many proposed solutions to this problem. However, the most effective, especially in the short term, is also the most morally repugnant: kill some of the humans. This so-called solution is a version of eco-fascism, which has been around in one form or another since the 1920s. Most people will not consider it, for very obvious reasons. But it's an idea which just won't go away. So I think it's worth considering the point of view of this hypothetical environmentally friendly Hitler to help us understand why the argument itself is fundamentally flawed. So let's begin. Murder is bad and hard. So if we accept that our problem with carbon emissions is that there are too many humans, and that the only solution is to kill some of them, let's try and solve this problem by killing as few of the humans as possible. Now, we could Thanos snap half the population into non-existence, regardless of gender, ethnicity, or nationality. But when it comes to carbon emissions, not all countries are created equal. I'm Australian, and by chance, Australia emits more carbon than most other nations, around 16.8 tonnes per person per year. That's 4 times more than the average Swede. In fact, Australia's carbon footprint is more than the combined emissions of Albania, Estonia, Luxembourg, Burkina Faso, Jamaica, and Papua New Guinea, plus all of these other countries as well, which have a total population of almost 270 million people, more than 10 times that of Australia. So if you want to kill as few humans as possible, we should definitely start with those 25 million Australians. But we can actually reduce this even further. 1/3 of Australia's carbon emissions comes from electricity generation. Now, according to these reports, Australia is one of the few countries that could relatively quickly and relatively cheaply change to an almost entirely renewable energy grid. If we did that, we could reduce the amount of Australians we have to kill by 8 million. That's a good start, but we can go even further. We could stop building fossil fuel power plants, introduce emission standards, subsidise electric cars and exempt them from the luxury vehicle tax, reintroduce the carbon tax, build a high-speed rail link between Melbourne and Brisbane, only allow logging in plantations, invest in lithium mining, reintroduce electrical goods efficiency standards, stop giving coal mines free water and remove their exception to the diesel excise tax, introduce a carbon rating on products, improve energy regulation on new housing, and none of this would affect our standard of living, and most of it would stimulate the economy. So why isn't any of this happening?
This is coal. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared.
The Treasurer knows the rule on...
That's Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister of Australia, at time of recording. He leads the governing coalition of the Liberal Party, right-wing, and the National Party, more right-wing. While officially he and his party believe in climate change, unofficially a lot of Australian politicians are climate deniers, or worse.
It's climate change policy that's doing harm. Climate change itself is probably doing good.
And practically speaking, the government has repealed most of the policies designed to reduce Australia's carbon emissions since they came to power in 2013. So a more efficient way to significantly reduce Australia's carbon footprint would be to kill the people who vote for them. Before the last election, if 17,000 Liberal voters had not voted in marginal electorates, we would currently have a Labour and Green coalition working hard on reducing Australia's carbon footprint without murdering people. That is a small amount of voters for a massive change of government. Our system is so broken. Or, instead of getting rid of Liberal voters, we could kill Liberal politicians. Most of them are climate deniers, but not all of them. Matt Keane, for example, the New South Wales State Minister for Energy, is massively against fossil fuels because they don't make economic sense. In order for him to become the leader of the Liberal Party, we just need to kill 180 politicians. That's much better than the 25 million people we were talking about earlier. Of course, when you start framing the issue like this, it quickly becomes clear that the real problem is policy, not population. So we could get the same result by persuading 9,000 Liberal voters to vote Labour at the next election, and we wouldn't have to kill anyone at all. Except Rupert Murdoch. So why do you hear the eco-fascism argument doing the rounds so much? Well, there are two reasons. First, if you say that the only problem with carbon emissions is overpopulation, then the only solution is to kill people, fascism, which most of us, myself included, are against. Overpopulation then becomes an argument for inaction. If there's nothing that you can do, then you may as well do nothing. It becomes an argument for the status quo, and it's often made by the people who profit from that. But this is about blame as well. There is a strong correlation between wealth, carbon emissions, and low birth rates. The countries which are currently, and historically, most responsible for carbon emissions have birth rates below the replacement value of 2.1 children per woman. Meanwhile, countries with higher birth rates are less industrialized and less responsible for CO2 emissions. By framing the problem as overpopulation, this lets people in wealthy nations say it's not their fault, when it is, and that they can't do anything about it, when they can. Now, I'm not saying that anyone who talks about overpopulation is a fascist, and in fact, most people who hold this position, like Richard Heinberg, are making a point about consumption, not population control. But it's too easy for this argument to be twisted into promoting an action or into shifting blame. So if you're at a party and someone starts saying something like, human beings are a disease, then pay close attention to what they say next.
If we share what we have, and we celebrate together the miracle of our humanity, we can have more of what really counts.